So with the antifreeze leak from the previous video, hopefully sorted out now. The skid plate was folded up, the bonnet, hood, engine cover, call it whatever you want, was folded down. Machine was started, did look around for some leaks, and at least back at the valve package for the cabin tilt, it seems really dry right now. Around the crane there might still be a little oil dripping out somewhere, and with the crane raised up, it was a little better access at the back to put the clamp that holds the hose that protects the electric cable out to the harvester head. Still, it's plenty tight down there, so not really possible to do any video footage showing it. And machine was turned around and the harvester head brought in, because it will mainly be about repacking a couple of pressure regulators in here that I had confirmed leaking. I had replaced two of them earlier. Yeah, and prepared a little some bar for the drain in the log building, the wood storage, and an update on that will come in the future when we have the doors in place. That's pretty much what's left now. Some lighting has been fitted and so on. My dad has done most of the work there, and I thank him a lot for that, for helping out. So with the harvester head undressed, we loosen the big hoses that are in the way, because I will take off pretty much everything on one side of the valve block here and address some issues, because this was wrenched in this winter when it was leaking quite a bit, and turned out to be that top block that I have a video on. I think that was the root of a lot of the wrenching here that eventually got bad enough that it couldn't really be missed, or well, it wasn't super easy to find, but it was leaking enough that it had to be done. But these things had been off the adapters down here on the valve block, and we had used improper seal. We had taken O-rings from some boxes here, and they should have these proper like triangular in cross section shaped that I talked about in a previous video. Ended up not having enough of these seals in the correct size, but luckily there is a company that works with mining equipment not too far away that are good guys that had, so I could purchase some from them and get a little more progress that day, because I thought these here would be a smaller size than on the valve block for the crane, but turned out they are the same. Now over to the regulator that I think is the main in this one, and they are on there good enough that the homemade tool from mild steel bent. Luckily we had ground down a knife to the suitable size that it would fit and undo them, and that harder steel made it come undone. And as I had replaced a couple earlier, I had brought them to a place that sells O-rings and just purchased some new O-rings for them, and support rings. The support rings that I ended up buying, I didn't really like the fit of that, so I ended up reusing the old support ring for one of the O-rings there. So there are 3 O-rings needing to be replaced. One is on the adjuster itself, and trying to get that off, it actually broke. It's would say that's a sign that it's old and brittle and maybe not sealing. I think this one is the cause of the leak. So a new O-ring in place, and it was tightened back in with the spring and the cone regulator, and then the lock ring could be put back in place. I had counted the revolutions it was turned in before undoing it, so that it could be brought back to the same position backed out. I ended up I did install it before I adjusted it back to where it should be. Missed a little on installing the O-rings on it, but there are two O-rings, one with a support ring and one that seals the like the main body at the top, and then it was tightened back down. And all of this was repeated for the next one, counting the revolutions to back it out until it stops towards the lock ring. And same procedure, new O-rings. Here I didn't bother picking it, I just took a knife and cut it until it came undone very easily. Used a little bit of oil. Here I'm working on the adapters and fitting the new proper ED seal, or maybe they are called WD seals or something, elasto seals maybe. It should be the correct seal for it at least, and you should have the flat surface down in the groove and the beveled edge up against the block. That's the info that picture I showed you earlier, even if the seller wasn't sure and actually said the other way around, but I'm following the instructions I found online. Cut a little piece of hose because I am rerouting one of the hydraulic hoses a little, and it goes over a little bit of a sharp edge. A lot of these places had fresh O-rings on them this winter, so I'm not replacing all of them, but a couple fell off as I disassembled, so installing new O-rings for the hoses, the seal of the hose. And here I'm working on installing the protection on that hose I've been rerouting, and I needed to undo a electric connector here to be able to get the access, so that will give me a little more clearance and it won't have to rub against the connections up here. And time to start assembling for this fix at least. More will come. And there is a spider web of hoses here that needs to go back in place, and I had taken care keeping track of where everything went and taking a few pictures before and after. And here I was too quick at installing the hose, so I couldn't get access to the adapter, but luckily I had those crow's feet that you don't use very often, but every now and then they shine, so it could be tightened without removing the hose. And more adapters going in place, and there are angles and T connectors to make room for everything. Tightened up that small hose that was removed just for access, and pretty straightforward. Even if it's tricky, you have to take the wrench out and flip it to have clearance enough to start tightening things, and here and there a few of the things tightened up wanted to twist a little, so you have to hold them back and kind of force them into position. Eventually it gets closer and closer to being done. Last few hoses going in place. I'm sure I will have a leak here in the future anyway, but hopefully not in the near future. And then I did a little premature cleaning because I had to bring down the big hoses feeding the harvester head, and that caused some oil to spill over the area I tried to clean up. But it's back together for now, but I've done a little more wrenching. There will be a video about the hydraulic hose from hell in the near future.